quick logistical things. Yesterday after the session, Ian lecture talked about it, about muting and unmuting, right? So what we thought was, if everyone can mute themselves and they can unmute whenever they want to talk to and mute back, So I'm going to unmute everyone. If you can go ahead and mute yourself, we can do a quick check that you're able to mute and unmute, so that you can go ahead and do it yourself instead of we trying to manage it on our end. Okay, so I'm going to unmute you all at this point in time. Please go ahead and mute yourself.
Okay, here it's not coming from here. I don't know. Oh, maybe I have to set on the device or whatever. Maybe I have to reset.
Yeah, it just worked.
Maybe you have to reset the program and then that's what you have to do. You have to close it down, then turn it on again, then it should come.
All right.
Yeah, it's okay.
So I think I'm just scrolling through the folks who have muted and unmuted. At this point in time, I see it's Charles. Maybe you might have to mute yourself, Charles.
Hello.
Hey, Charles.
Hi.
Yeah. So what we are trying to do here is, if you can have the control of muting yourself, that'd be great. Okay, and go ahead and mute yourself, please. If you have any questions, so here's what we would be doing. We'll try to take breaks at the end of maybe every 2 slides. But if there is a very, very pressing question for you that you just cannot wait and you think that the context will be lost, please go ahead, unmute yourself, ask the question, and mute yourself back. Okay. Otherwise, we will, go with a slightly higher pace today. And when I mean pace, what I mean is we would like to get into details of more of Selenium-based programming, and then since there will be a week gap before we meet again, there should be enough number of exercises for you to chew upon. Okay. So again, my name is Pradeep Macharla. We are in the class 2 for the Selenium WebDriver online training. So today we would the high-level agenda. What we will be following is we will quickly touch upon class 1 concepts. There is no order in which I'm going to go through this, but quickly touch upon this. Yesterday we briefly talked about what is a class and an object in Java. We will touch upon getters and setters, and we'll also touch upon conditionals and loops today. And then we will spend the majority of our time on Selenium programming, which is we'll start with browser commands, we will navigate, and we will get started with HTML locators. Okay. All right. So with that said, I'm getting back to this diagram. The reason is we would need to have this thinking at the back of our mind, whenever we do Selenium, right? I will come back to this diagram in a while before we get ahead and do write some Selenium commands. Before that, let's get back to our simple Java class and object yesterday where we left. Okay. So yesterday we created a very simple class, right? We called it simple class, and we had 3 integers a, b, c. We had a constructor. Again, constructor is the method which gets called whenever the class is instantiated, and in the constructor we have initialized the values of a, b, c, and then we define a simple method. Okay, and in another class we have used the simple class, meaning we have instantiated the simple class and we have printed the value of a. to see if the constructor was called, meaning A's value was 1. So if I go ahead and execute it, you would see that it is 1. Okay. Now let's go a little bit into the details of this class. Right. Now we have three variables or properties of this class, which is A, B, C, and they are initialized here. Now, in Java, whenever we define a class, there are properties and there are a bunch of methods, as we talked about yesterday. Every class will have a set of properties which will represent the state of the class or object, and then we will have a bunch of methods which describe the behavior of the class. So with that said, one of the best practice is we always should access the member variables of the class only by its methods, meaning what we have done is we have directly accessed the member variable here. Now this is not a best practice. So for now, just we will have to declare these variables as private. Okay. Private means only the methods of this class can access these variables, and this is one of the best practices of defining a class. Now you must have seen that if the class, before class we had public here, before a method we had public here. What public means is we are able to access this method outside of the class just by holding the reference to the class. Now we need not go into the extreme details of what is public, where all it applies, because when we do Selenium programming, most of the times we are declaring methods as public, okay, and the member variables are going to be private. This is all what you need to know for Selenium. Okay. So with that said, now I have defined my properties of the class as private. Now if I save this class and I go back to this access simple class, you can see that there is an error. What does it say? The field simple class.a is not visible, because we have defined this as a private. You cannot access directly the variable outside of this class, right? However, you can access A within the class, because see how we have access to ABC inside the constructor. We can access A within the class, but outside you cannot refer it directly. But then what do I do if I have to access, right? So the standard way of accessing any numbers are always getters and setters. The easiest way in Eclipse is always right click on the member variables. If you go to source, there will be an option where it says generate getters and setters. Okay, so just click that and it will ask you want to generate getters and setters for what variables? A, B, and C. In my case, I want all three. Okay, and just say OK. Access the default, say OK. Now you can see a bunch of code is generated here. Okay. So this is the code which gets generated. What does it do? It says public int get A, return A, and then public void set A assigns this. So for each of these variables, this is a getter. What does a getter mean? If we want to access variable A outside of this class, we will call this method called get A. Okay, and if we want to set the variable, we will call set A and pass the value which we want to set. So going back to this, let me say this class first. Now here, if I want to access the value A, what I would do, I would say sc dot, and then you can see that we will get the get method. Okay, so if I run this program now, you can see that 1 is printed, 1 which is otherwise the value for A. Okay, so this is a getter. Now what if you want to set the value? So let's say I want to set the value of A, right? I would say sc dot set A, okay, and then what value I want to set. Let's say I want the value of A to be 2, okay, I would do a set, okay, and now again I would print the value to see whether it is set or not. And how do I see again? I should always call the get method. Okay, so I'm going to say here before setting, okay, this is after setting. So if I run this program now, so before setting the value is 1 and after setting the value is 2. Okay, so that's about getters and setters. The takeaway from this is always define the member variables or the properties of a class as private and generate getters and setters, and only access the variables through their getters and set the values through their setters. So this is the best practice, and as you get into more and more of Java programming, you will realize why this is very important. From a data security perspective, we should never access the member variables directly. Okay. I'll take a brief pause here. Any questions anyone has? Go ahead and unmute yourself and ask the question. Okay. Question from Sharmista. How to do get and set? Okay. So a simple way. Let me take this code out again. Okay. So this was the initial code what we had. Right. So what you would do. Let me show you the line numbers. Okay. Line numbers are shown. Right click anywhere. Okay. On the member variables like this private int A, private int B. Right click anywhere. Then there would be an option called source. Okay. Hover over source, then there will be generate getters and setters. Okay. You do generate getters and setters, it will automatically detect these ABC variables, select all, and say OK, and it will generate the values for us. Okay. Got a little. Let me do it here. Right. Source, generate getters and setters. Okay, so that's about it. Let's see if anyone else has any questions. Okay, question is, how are getters and setters related to constructors? No, getters and setters are not related to constructors. They are just a way to access member variables. So constructor is a totally different concept. Constructor gets called only when the class is instantiated. Getters and setters are the way to access those member variables. So no, they are not related. Any other questions from anyone? Okay. Cool. Now, let's say we want to access this class in a different package. Right now, if you see, we have a package called Automation Framework. Okay, and then we had a class, simple class. Okay, and then we access the simple class in another class in the same package. Let's say I had another package. I'm going to create a new package. I will just call it Automation Framework, Automation Sub Framework. Okay, just to call it a subordinate framework. Okay, so once I created this, a framework is a package is created. Now I would go ahead and create another class where I want to access the simple class, right? So I will say accessing simple class sub package, and I would select the public static void main. Okay. Let's make this under this. Oh no, sorry. So the package is already created and we have accessing it in a different package. Now let's say if I want to access simple class. So the same thing what I would do here, right? What I would say simple class SC is equal to simple class. And if I did this, you can see that it has added this statement. It says import automation framework of simple class. Why did it do this? Because the simple class is defined under the package automation framework, and if we had to access simple class elsewhere meaning here we are accessing it under automation sub framework, okay, then it will automatically import this. If it doesn't, let's say for example I remove the statement and save this file. What does it say? There is an error here, and if you click the error, it says import simple class, okay, from automation framework. Just click that and it will add this. Now I had another folder, automation framework full. Now this is the actual code what will be given to you. This is my play area wherever I put the entire code. This will be given to you later, and that's why when it prompted two options for me, correct? Here when I did this, it said import simple class automation framework, and there was also a simple class in automation framework full. For now, ignore the automation framework full package. Okay. So that's how you access a class, within a package or outside a package. Okay. So that's briefly what I wanted to touch upon class, object, getters, and setters. Now let's go into a little bit details of conditionals and loops. Okay. Closing this. Alright, conditionals. Okay, so conditionals. Now we'll encounter many situations where we will have to write code, and conditions are required, expressions are required, evaluation is required. So let's talk a little bit about some of the conditionals which are available as part of the Java programming language. Not going to spend much time on this because anyways we will be touching upon it while we write Selenium code and so on and so forth. So let's do a very basic thing. Let's understand the different type of operators available, right? Addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. The most basic. So let's define integer sum initialized to 0. Let's define a variable A30, B40. And what am I doing? I'm adding A and B, okay, and then printing out the sum. Okay. So once I do this, I'm going to comment the, let's just move on. So subtraction similarly, right? The subtraction is A minus B. Subtraction of B from A is subtraction. Multiplication, you would put a star. That is how the operator for multiplication is. Division, let's say we have defined a float number, division, and we are dividing B by A, and then we are outputting the division value. Okay. So that said, let's execute this. I'm commenting the rest of the code for now. Okay. And the way you would comment is you would press Control and a / on your keyboard, so that will comment the code. Okay. So what code are we executing right now? We are just doing addition, subtraction, division, and multiplication. So I'm just going to go ahead and execute this. Okay. Let's see the output. This sum of A and B is 70. Subtraction, multiplication, and division. Okay, so pretty simple. Just remember the operators. Plus stands for addition, minus stands for subtraction, star stands for multiplication, and / stands for division. Okay, now let's go to the next, relational operators. The next one are relational operators. So comment this. Okay, so first thing is we want to check whether A equal to B, right? So what is the A value? We have 30, B equal to 40. So you can see that there is a double equal to here. Instead of just is equal to, we have double equal to. If we put an is equal to, that means we are assigning the value of B to A, if we say A equal to B. So whenever we want to check the equality of two variables or classes, what we do is we put a double equal to, okay, and we check with an if statement. If A equal to B, then print. Now in this case, A is 30 and B is 40. So what should this evaluate to? It should be false. So if A equal to B, system.out.println, A and B are equal, correct? Now in this case, A and B are not equal, so this statement will not be printed. Okay. So let's go ahead and uncomment this line. What am I doing here first? I'm assigning the value of B to A. So at this point, the 40 will be assigned to A. So now this statement will become true all of a sudden because A will be 40, B also will be 40. Okay. So we do that, and let me go ahead and comment the rest of the code. And okay. So again, what we are doing, we are assigning the value of B to A, and then we are checking whether A equal to B. So we run this. It says A and B are equal because we have assigned it. Let's say if we did not have the statement, right? It will not print because it will not enter this loop because A and B are not equal. So if I go ahead and execute this now, you won't see anything. Whatever was there previously with the addition subtraction is what you would see. Okay. Now let's talk next thing about the A is not equal to B. Okay. So here A is initialized to 30 and B is initialized to 40. Okay. So if A is not equal to B, this becomes true now because I'm not assigning the value of A to B. System.out.println, A and B are not equal. So if I go ahead and execute this, it prints A and B are not equal, which is true. Okay. Now the next value what we will do is we are calling A equal to A plus B. So what happens to this at this point? A equal to 40 plus 30. A becomes 70 at this point in time. Now, and what we are checking here is the greater than symbol. If A is greater than B, right? In this case, A becomes greater than B. So go ahead and comment this and run this. True, A is greater than B. So I see you get the point. It's basically showing you that equality is checked with double equal to, non-equality is checked with an exclamation mark is equal to, greater than is greater than symbol, and then less than is less than symbol, right? And then you can combine as well, right? You can even say greater than or equal to. Okay, and you can say less than or equal to. No, we have used always if, right? What if there is an else statement? Meaning, if this does not evaluate to true, what to do otherwise? So that's where we have an if else statement, right? So let's go ahead and execute and see, until this point what will happen. So if you see what will happen, what we have done initially, A is equal to what is that, 30, B equal to 40. Okay, and each of these blocks will get executed based on the values of whether A is equal to B or not equal to, less than, greater than, and so on and so forth. Now in this case here, we have changed the value of A here at this point where we said A is equal to A plus B, which means A becomes 70 at this point in time. So let's evaluate whether this will be true, right? Is 70 greater than 40? that is true. So it should print A is greater than B in this case. So let's go ahead and run this. Okay. So the last two statements, right? The last, this one, this block is the one which prints this. Okay. Okay, so so that is about simply about if and else and some operators. Let's go into another set of operators called Boolean operators. So let's go ahead with that. So let's say I want to check whether A is less than 10 and A is greater than 0. So far we have just done one expression, right? We are just checking whether A is less than B, A is greater than B. We can also combine, we can do an AND operation, right, by putting double ampersand. So if A is less than 10 and A is greater than 0, right, that means is A lying between 0 to 10, then I will say A is between 0 and 10. Otherwise, I will check if A is less than 20, greater than 11, meaning if A is between 11 and 20. Otherwise, I'll print A is greater than 20. Now, at this point, since we have already assigned A is equal to A plus B, A value is 70. So, this code block should get executed. And let's test that. So, it prints A is greater than 20. So, the point here is to understand that if you want to check multiple expressions, you can use a double ampersand. Okay. Similarly, you would have an OR symbol, right? If A is equal to 2 or A is equal, here what we do, we first reassign the value of A to 10, okay, and then we check if A is 2, A is 5 or A equal to 10. Now, since A equal to 10, this is true, right? And in an OR operation, first thing, is A equal to 2? It is not. So the value of this will be 0. Okay, the return value will be 0. Is A equal to 5? No. So the return is 0. Is A equal to 10? Yes. The return is 1. So if you do a 0 or 1, the expression evaluation is 1, meaning it is true. So it enters this block and it prints this statement. Okay, let's go ahead and execute this. So it says A is 2, 5 or 10. Okay, had this been, let's say, for example, 11, right? A is being 11. So what happens? First, it comes and checks this expression. A equal to 2 means 11, is 11 equal to 2? No, false. So false is represented with a bit 0. Okay. Is A equal to 5? No, 0. Is A equal to 10? No, 0. So 0 or 0 or 0 is 0. That means this is, it will check if this whole expression is false. That means it doesn't enter this loop. It will go and do the else block, which is A is not 2, 5 or 10. So let's go ahead and execute that. Okay, so it says A is not 2, 5 or 10. So again, the takeaway from this is you can evaluate multiple expressions by ANDing them like this with a double ampersand, or you can OR them with a pipe symbol. Okay. Again, the more you keep on writing, while writing Selenium, you would have to check lots of things, like you will check whether this string is equal to that, whether this string is greater than that. So you will revisit this again and again, and that's why I'm not spending too much of time, because we will again revisit this. Now let's talk a little bit about loops, right? So what are loops, right? There are lots of loops, looping constructs. The most interesting for us would be a while loop, and there will be a for loop. So let's say integer x is 0. Okay. While x is less than or equal to 20, what I want to do, I'm printing the value of x. Okay. And each time this block gets I'm incrementing the value of x here. Okay, so what does the while loop do? The while loop has a block, okay, a block of code which gets executed, okay, as long as this expression is true. Okay, once again I'll repeat that. A loop, a while loop, has a block which gets executed as long as the expression is true. True as in returns 1. Okay, so let's talk about this loop. We said int x equal to 0, that is x value is 0. So when this line of code gets executed, this line, what does it say? 0 is less than or equal to 20. 0 is less than or equal to 20 is true. That means this block will get executed. What happens? It will come and print the value of x, which is 0. Okay. Next, what it will do? It will increment the value of x by 1. So at this point, x becomes 1. Okay. Now, the while loop will again check, is x less than 20? Is 1 less than or equal to 20? True. So it will come and print now the value of x, which is 1, and increment it. And so on and so forth. It keeps repeating it until at some point, right, x will become 20. X will become 21 at some point. At that point, it will come and say, is 21 less than or equal to 20? False, right? Now it doesn't execute the block. It will just stop at this point. So what we should expect to see when we execute this is we should see 0, 1, 2, 3, and so on up to 20. So let's go ahead and execute this. Okay, so that's what we see here. Starts from value of x equal to 0, prints until value of x equal to 20. Whenever x becomes 21, this block will not get executed, and the reason why, this expression will evaluate to false, that is 0. Okay, so this is while loop, and you know, again, there is all enough comment for you for later to refer to this. Another statement, loop, which is extremely important for us, is a for loop. Okay, let's briefly talk about this. A for loop generally starts with an initialization, an expression, and an update, and a block of code. So let's take a look at an example. Okay, so what we are doing in this for loop is we are initializing y to the value of 0. We are checking the expression value, is y less than or equal to 20, and we are incrementing y after every loop, and then we are printing the value of y. Okay, I'm going to comment this. Okay, so we are printing the value of y. So let's go ahead and let me comment out this while block for now. Let's go ahead and execute this code again. Okay, so you can see that value of y is 0 all the way to 20. So this is the output of this is pretty much the same as the while loop, but the benefit of using a for loop is you can initialize a value, you can evaluate an expression, and you can update all three in the same line, and you know, you can execute a block of code. So anyways, so that's little bit about, you know, conditionals. What we talked about was operators, addition, subtraction, division, multiplication. We talked about how we can evaluate expressions using an if. Double equal to is what you need to remember. It's not a single equal to. You check for not equality, greater than, less than. Okay, and you have some Boolean operators where you can evaluate multiple expressions at the same time using AND, if you want to do an AND operation, or if you can do an OR operation. And eventually we talked about a while loop and a for loop. So these constructs would help you a lot, and you will realize this as we write more and more. Okay, I'll take a brief 1 minute here. Stop for any questions. please unmute yourself and okay. So a question is, okay, let me open up. Okay, so question is difference between while and for loops. What kind of situations differently they will be used? Okay, so if you think about while, right? Let's go and look back at the while statement. What is, another way of interpreting while is saying that until the condition becomes false, keep on executing this. Okay, so this condition, right? Until this condition becomes false, we will keep on executing this block. Okay, so let's say, for example, I put a condition where I say while x is greater than or equal to 0. Okay. Now, if you think about this, this condition will always be true, whatever I do here, right? Because x is initialized with 0, and I'm always incrementing x. So x will become 1, and in that case, this will evaluate to 2. X will become 2, it will evaluate to 2, and so on and so forth. So this is an infinite loop. This will never end here. Now, this is extremely bad coding, but just to give you an example, this will never become false. Okay, so you will have to watch out very carefully while using while loop, and you will have to ensure that the expression will evaluate to false at some point in time. Otherwise, it will become an infinite. Okay. On the other hand, now if you think about for loop, right? What have we done here? For loop also we have initialized, we have given an expression, and we have incremented. So we have better control on visibility into what we are doing in a for loop. So we have bounded this expression with a lower bound and an upper bound. Okay.
What's the difference between the and, the double ampersand and a single ampersand?
Okay. Yes, the single ampersand is used in another situation called bitwise operators. We haven't covered that. So right now we are directly dealing with variables, but there is a whole new concept where we do bitwise operations, where we are accessing the bits, right? You can represent the binary representation of any variable in form of bits, and that is out of scope for what we are doing here. We will never encounter a situation where we will be doing a single ampersand and doing bitwise operators in Selenium course. However, if you are interested, we can talk about it after the class. But this will be out of scope for our Selenium. This will be pure Java programming in general. Okay. Let's see if anyone has any other questions. Okay, cool. All right. So that was again, touching upon a little Java programming fundamentals. Now let's go back to our presentation. Okay, coming back to this diagram, right? Yesterday we talked about, on the left side, whenever you hit ToolsQA.com, when you enter the website, the ToolsQA server serves some data which gets rendered onto the browser. And what gets rendered? A bunch of text boxes, links, buttons. But the thinking we will need to develop is behind each of these elements there is a DOM representation, HTML DOM, document object model. And you can see that there are certain tags for representation of each of these elements or text, and so on and so forth. Okay, so let's go into details of this HTML DOM, because you will find this again and again that while you write Selenium script, the first thing is being able to think in terms of the HTML DOM. Okay. So basics, right? HTML basics. HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. In HTML, every element is described by a markup. For example, as you can see, a paragraph is written with a P tag, less than and greater than symbol, and a P. This is a simple paragraph. And you can see it starts with a tag and ends with an ending tag. Ending tag, as you can see, there is a slash. Okay, so a paragraph is P. A simple HTML structure, right? You would always find that HTML is the initial tag. Of course, at the top you have the doc type HTML, that is a directive, and it ends with an HTML tag. So any web page you open up, you would find HTML tag at the top, and you would also find it the ending HTML tag, and in between all the tags go, like the body, head, and so on. We will take a look at the actual website. Okay, so attributes, right? Attributes of an HTML element. So let's go on to the website and take a look. Okay, demoqa.com. We will be using this website time and again for our practice exercises. So let's say we have hit the website demoqa.com. Okay. Now anywhere on the page, if I go ahead and right click, by the way, I'm using Chrome browser. You are allowed to use other browsers too, and we will talk about other browsers, how we can achieve the same things. I find always Chrome to be very easy in terms of navigation, so I use Chrome. So right click anywhere on the page, and if you say view page source, right, you will get the entire HTML for the page. It starts with doc type HTML, HTML, head, so on and so forth. You will find a lot of content. This is the entire DOM for this web page what we are looking at. Okay. Now let's go ahead and look at one of the elements. Let's say we are looking at the registration element. So in Chrome, when you right click and say inspect element, right, it would open up this window at the left bottom where it will show you the actual representation of that element. Okay, so what we are looking at here is, it says it's a A. A stands for an anchor. Anchors are generally links which are clickable. Okay, and you can see that the tag A, and then it ends with an A, right? So the opening tag, which is less than A, and then there is an href is equal to, and then there is a greater than, which is a closing tag, and then there is a value called registration, and then there is a closing tag. So let's talk briefly about this. So you can see that the tag name is A. The href, what you have here, href is equal to http this, is called an attribute for the tag. Okay, so let's take another example. Now for this A, we have only one attribute, which is href, and the value of that attribute is demoqa registration. Let's take a much another example. Let's say the tag above this, li. Li stands for list element. Okay, it has an ID which is value menu item 374. It has another attribute class, which is, there are lots of values here separated by space. What this means is the class attribute has multiple values separated by the space. Okay, so think about any tag. The way a tag looks like is you will have the tag name, you will have a bunch of attributes, okay, and then you will have the value of the tag, okay, and then the tag will be closed. We have looked at very simple element, which is an anchor. Now let's talk about, let's say I want to look at a text box or any of this. So let me go ahead and click registration, for example. Okay, when I click registration page, you can see that there is a bunch of elements. This is a text box. Okay, so I'll right click this on this and say inspect element. If we inspect this element, what does it say? It says it's of type input, value, ID is, okay, name, class, so on and so forth. So it has lots of attributes. Okay, so the takeaway from this is to identify any element. You will look at its tag, you will identify its tag name, you will identify a bunch of attributes which these element would have. Okay, and then there will be a closing tag. Now this will be extremely helpful for us in identifying elements in Selenium. These are otherwise called locators as well. So let's go back to our presentation and let's run through what are the different types of tags, how do they get represented, what are the elements, what are the attributes, so on and so forth. So we just briefly talked about paragraph, right? So a simple HTML, you'll notice that it has a start and an end tag, which is pretty straightforward. Okay, different HTML tags, right? Anchor tag is what we have just seen. So anchor tag is used to represent links on a web page. An anchor tag is represented by A. Okay, the attributes can be multiple: href, ID, name, etc. In our case, where we have seen for the registration, we have just found href. So two examples, as you can see. It says A href is yahoo.com. Simple anchor tag is the value. So whenever we click on that, it will open the target URL in the same browser tab. The second example, what you would see, it says href is google.com. Target is _blank. It will open up in a new tab or a window. Now we need not worry about do we have to write these values like target equal to blank? No, we don't write any of these values. Whenever we hit a website, the server automatically fills up all these values. What we will need to identify is we will need to look up for this tag and we will need to extract what information we want and embed it in our Selenium code. So at this point we are just trying to understand, decipher more, looking at the tags so that it will be useful for us when we start programming. Okay, image tag starts generally with an img. Okay, so it has attributes src, alt, id name. Let's if you go back to demoqa.com, right? Take any image. Let me go back to the home page of DemoQA. Okay, so let's look at this, right? This is an image, what you're seeing here. I'll right click on this and say inspect element, right? If you see it's an img, right? It has a class, it has an src, it has an alt, width, height, so on and so forth. Okay. So ToolsQA.com has similarly has a height, width. Table, right? A table will always consist of at least one row and one column, otherwise it wouldn't be called a table. So a typical table looks like this. We will go through more tables as we encounter them. Again, ordered and unordered list, right? And an ordered list is represented by OL, and each element is represented by an li tag, what we have just seen, right? An li tag where the registration, when we right click and inspect this element, we have seen an li, right? Here, this one. A frame. Okay, a frame is an inline frame which is used to embed another HTML document inside an HTML document. This is when we start writing the code, I will give you an example of where this iframe would be important for us. For now, we are just walking through these slides for you to identify that there can be different type of elements and the tags which those elements are represented in the HTML document. Okay, input tag, right? Input tag is used to represent an edit field or a text box. Okay, based on the attributes, an input tag takes the role of input box or a button. So just now we have seen the first name on the registration page is an input tag, right? So there can be different values and so on and so forth. Okay. select tag, for example. If you look at it, a select, and there will be a bunch of options under the select tag. Again, I'm rushing through this. We will revisit each of these elements. We will write scripts for these, and again we'll get to revisit all of this. Okay. So attributes, as we talked about, ID, name, class. There are many attributes of an HTML element. Some of these are listed here. This is for your reference later. Locators, right? We just mentioned. Okay. Locators are extremely important for us because when we start writing Selenium script, there are a certain set of locators we will use to identify each element. Okay, some of them being ID, class, tag name, and link text. We will cover more in the class. Okay, all right. So with that said, let's get into some hands-on coding. Okay. So yesterday we wrote a very simple Selenium example, right? Where we have opened ToolsQA.com. That's it. We have just launched the browser and we have quit the browser. That is all we have done yesterday. Now let's talk briefly about some of the browser commands which we did not cover yesterday. Okay. So what you're looking at is we are opening the website, right? The first command, what you would, let's say you want to print the title of the website. Okay, title. 2x's out. Okay, and let me go ahead and say title is equal to, the command for the title is driver dot. Okay. Get title. Okay. Okay, there is an error here. Okay, we need to create a variable. Okay. So this is the command for getting the title, and I'm going to print the title. Okay, so what we are doing, instead of ToolsQA.com, let me go ahead and open DemoQA.com. Okay, it is a much richer website, and we will be doing more practice exercises on this website. Let me go ahead and execute. What am I doing here? I am creating a Firefox driver, opening the website DemoQA.com, printing the title. That's it. Okay. So what we are doing here is basic browser based commands. Now all of these are also found on the website. So if you go onto the website and see the browser commands, right, you will find pretty much all of these. So you can go ahead later, take code from here, or just take the project what we are giving you. Let me go ahead and execute this. And let me go. Okay. So since I'm using a Firefox driver, opens demoqa.com. Okay. Okay. So what does it say? Title. Title of the website. Okay. Demoqa.com. Okay. Let me put a separator here so that you can understand this much better. So what does it say? DemoQA, just another WordPress website. That is the title of the website. We will use this, and as part of your real-time projects, one of your validation criteria, if you write a test case where you would say, am I visiting the right website? What you can do, you can print the title and check that, whether you are able to hit the right website. So this is one way. So this is one of the first browser-based commands. Let's say you want to print the current URL of the website what you visited. So current URL. String URL is you can see there will be get current URL. Okay, and let's print that. Okay. Now here I've been using Firefox driver for quite some time now. Let me switch to Chrome because I find Chrome a little bit faster. Okay. So all I'm going to do is I will uncomment this. I will comment this, and I'll update the reference right to Chrome. Okay. So what we are trying to print here is the current URL. Go ahead and execute this. Oops, I think demo queue is down. No. Take a while. Okay, so it printed the title and it printed the current URL, which is demoqa.com. Okay. The next thing is page source, right? Get page source. Let's say we want to print the entire page source. What you would say? Let's say string page source is so let's run this again now. Okay, so you can see it printed a lot of content here because the page source is huge, right? As we have seen previously, when we right click on and say view page source, right? It's printing all of this content, all of this. Okay, so we have printed the title, we have printed the current URL, and we have printed the page source. Now this will be helpful for you when you start writing some test cases and you want to automate these test cases. Based on the situation, you know that you have these capabilities that Selenium provides you. Okay, so again, all of these are present on ToolsQA website. You can do a get title, get current URL. Okay, you can do a get page source, and we have already done quit. Let's say you're going back and forth on a browser, right? You're going forward and then you're going backward. Okay, sometimes you're clicking refresh. So all these three operations, backward, forward, and refresh operations, are also available for us, and that is what we'll show you how to write this. Okay, so those are generally called navigate commands, and those are available on the ToolsQA website. Come down here and you see browser navigation commands. Okay. So the first thing is the navigate, right? Let's go ahead and write navigate. I'll write a new class for this. This file is getting cluttered with a lot of content, so go ahead and say browser navigate. Okay. First thing, I will create a Chrome driver. Save this file. As soon as I save this file, it says import Chrome driver. Just double click that and it adds the import statement. Save this file. First thing is I would navigate, right? Here in the previous example, what we have done is whenever we want to open a website in a browser, we say get, right? Navigate also, there is another command where we can open a website. So we can say driver.navigate, right? Navigate.to. Then we can pass the URL here. Okay. So this is just another way. You could as well have used, cdriver.get and then pass the URL. Let's go ahead and execute this. This is another way to open a website. Okay, so this command also opens the website. Let me put a quit statement so that every time we run the script, the browser closes at the same time. Okay, how do we do, let's say, forward, backward, and so on? When we first open the website, right? When we first open the website, let me go ahead and open a new one. Okay. DemoQA.com. Okay. Since we haven't navigated anywhere, we wouldn't find the forward button. Only when we have clicked something and navigated to a different page, right? If we come back, then the forward would be activated. So we will need to replicate the same steps in our code where we can activate forward and only then use it. Before we go ahead and do backward and forward, let's just do a refresh, right? Refreshing the page. So the way you would refresh is you would say dot navigate dot refresh, right? And let's go back to I want to show you quickly, right? The entire code is also posted here, right? Yesterday someone asked about, why are we putting thread.sleep? Because we wanted to see the behavior, that's why we put thread.sleep. Now, by default, you can also put implicit wait. There is a whole separate class in terms of how we handle wait and so on. For now, we are not going to go into details of this. Suffice to remember at this time that, okay, whenever we hit a website, it waits for 10 seconds before it does an operation. Okay. Let me go ahead and just take this code where I would want to navigate forward and backward. And when will the forward and backward get activated? Only when I do certain operations and move to other pages. Okay. So just take this code for now. Okay. And paste this here. And instead of Firefox driver, I'm going to use Chrome driver. Okay. And I will update my references everywhere, right? Okay, there are a couple of errors. I'm going to select the first option, whatever it suggests. Okay, so let's talk about this script. What are we doing here? We're first creating a Chrome driver. We are opening ToolsQA.com. We are putting an implicit wait. for now, ignore this. We will revisit this statement again. And after that, what we are doing is we are clicking on the About link here. Okay. In this class, we will spend time in terms of how to interact with the web elements. We will visit that in a while. So what we are essentially doing is we are hitting ToolsQA.com. Okay. So this is what we are doing in the script, hitting ToolsQA.com, and then we are clicking About. Okay. Once we click About, what we do, we navigate back. We hit the back button. Okay. Then we click Forward. Now we click Forward, and again we refresh. Okay, that's what we do here. So let me go ahead and execute this.
Pradeep, before that, just check the HTML locator for About link. I think it's of the old site.
Oh, okay. All right.
Wow, it worked.
Okay, click the About link, and then now it clicked back, right? Then it clicked Forward. It's waiting, right? As soon as it clicked back, and now it refreshed. So all the operations back, forward, and refresh. Okay, no errors. Everything executed fine. So I think actually the About was probably placed right. So so these are basic browser navigate commands. Okay, you will use them in combination with. Okay, well, let's do it quick. So these are browser navigate commands. Any questions on the browser navigate commands before we move into the actual interacting with the elements, and we will get into identifying elements. Give you a brief 10 to 20 seconds. Anyone have any questions? Okay. What is the difference between quit and close? Yes. So good question, right? So close, when we have close, right, it closes only the current window. Quit, on the other hand, closes all of the windows that are initiated by this web driver. So let's say, for example, we are on a website and we click the link, another page opens up from there. That means we have two windows. Okay. When we put close, only the current window in view will get closed. When we put quit, all of the windows which are open will get closed. Now, in my experience, it has always been found that quit is probably the most you would be using, and there will be rarely any situations where you will have to make a decision between, do I use close or do I use quit? Just go ahead and use quit, and it will all work fine for you. Another question: can you discuss timeout? Timeouts will be discussed in a separate class, Priya. We have lots of timeouts which we need to discuss: implicit, explicit, fluent waits, so on and so forth. So it requires a separate class. If I start discussing that here, I'm afraid we will get confused, and we might deviate completely from the topic. Okay. All right. The question: when you showed the anchor tag and list tag, the anchor tag was closed in the same line, but the list tag was closed in a different line below anchor tag. Why so? Okay. So let's talk briefly about this question, right? So once again, the question was when you showed the anchor tag. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at the anchor tag for registration once again. We inspect the element, right? Okay, so anchor tag, right? It was closed on the same line. That's correct. And your question was, whereas the link li, sorry, not link, li list item was closed on another line. Yes. The reason, because the li has a child element, which is an anchor. So whenever you have child elements, right, you will put the child elements and you will close the element elsewhere. So for example, if you look at unordered list, right? Unordered list has a child element li, and li has a child element anchor, and that closes them. Now we will go into each of these details again when we start using the locators to click on these elements. Right now we have just covered the very basic browser commands. Okay. Let's go back to the questions and see what questions are outstanding. Other than link text, what else can be used to locate about link element? Yeah, so there are multiple ways we can use to identify elements. We will be going into the details in a few seconds from now. There are multiple ways which are otherwise called locators, right? We can use multiple locators to identify elements. Can you please go over with the inspect element, clicking on about link again? Yes, so Anita, we will definitely go into details of how we can click on an element in detail. Give me a few seconds here. Any advantage of using navigate.to over driver.get? None that I am aware of. Both should pretty much do the same. Okay. So Lakshay says your screen is unshared. Hey guys, are you not able to look at my screen right now?
No, Pradeep, it's not. No, Pradeep, it's not working.
You're there by any chance?
Can you please unshare it and share it?
You're not looking at my screen?
No, we are not able to see it.
Okay, give me 1 second. How about now? Is it?
Yeah,
is it
got
being, okay? Thank you for pointing that out. Okay. Okay. I guess everyone can see the screen now. Give you 3 seconds if anyone is not able to see the screen. So what you're looking at is demoqa.com, and my mouse is hovering over this. So okay, cool. So now with knowing the browser commands, let's get into using more of the HTML locators to start clicking the elements. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. What I want to do here is I will want to open demoqa.com. Okay, and then I want to click on the registration link. Very simple thing. Open demoqa.com and click on the registration link. Okay, we know how to open demoqa.com by doing driver.get. Let's talk about how to click on registration link. Okay, so first thing what you will do, you will go ahead and inspect the element. Okay, and if you look at that, you would see it is an anchor and it has a value registration. The link text of it is registration. Okay, so go ahead and create a new class for this. Okay, so first step, create a driver. import the driver. Okay, so here is where in the probably in all the classes from here on we will be extensively using this construct. So how to identify an element and how to do an operation on the element. First step is always about identifying an element. Okay, so how do we identify an element? First we identify the locator for the element. Okay, in this case we want to click the registration link, right? So we identified here that it is an anchor and it has a link text. Now it doesn't have an ID, it doesn't have a class, it doesn't have a class, it doesn't have a name. So the more and more we do, we will realize over time that we will need to identify elements uniquely. Bear in mind, uniquely is the keyword here. There might be, over experience you will learn that, for example, list titles or unordered lists, they might have classes which are similar in values. So probably that is not a unique way to identify them. A unique way to identify an element generally is whenever it has an ID, name, right? Link text, for example, right? So let's talk about registration. The link text is registration. Now on this whole page, do you find another link which says registration? Right? Chances are there is no other link on this page which has a link text registration. If there is, or if there was, when we write the script, the way Selenium looks for when we pass that is it will always look for the first match. Okay. Now there are other strategies on how we can uniquely identify an element. We will learn that. For simplicity, for now, what we want to do, we just want to click on this and we identify that it is a registration. Okay. So when we go back here, and the first thing is we will need to identify the element. So I'll call this element, registration link. Okay. Registration link is equal to, I want to get the element, right? What I will do driver dot. So this is the API what you want to use. Find element. Okay. You will find multiple options here. You will find element by class name, by CSS selector, by ID, by link text. In this case, what we have is a link text because the registration is the link text. So we will select this here. Okay. By link text, and what do we need to pass here? The link text, which is okay. Generally, I don't like to type this. The best practice is you would end up making typos. So always, do an inspect element, double click, Control C, copy that, and paste it. Okay. Now, here it says create a local variable. Now, any element in the Selenium world is a web element. Okay, it is of type web element. So I'm going to go ahead and create this web element. So a button is a web element, a text field is a web element, a link is a web element. Okay, I'm going to import. So what we have done at this point is we have got the web element, which I'm naming it as registration link. And how did we identify that element? We said registration by passing the link text. Once we got that, we want to click that element, right? So how do you click that? You would take the element, okay, then do a dot, and there will be a method called click on it. So this essentially will first get the element and then click the element. So let's run this and see what happens. I'm going to put a sleep so that you can see that as soon as it clicked, instead of quitting immediately, right, we can see that it has clicked. I'm going to put a delay of 5 seconds. Okay. select this, add this distribution, and run this. Okay, it has clicked, right? It has clicked the registration, and since that is why we are seeing this one. We put a delay of 5 seconds. There you go. So going back to now, once again, click. Let's see, instead of directly clicking on the link, let's say you have, for example, right-clicked here, right, somewhere here, because you thought this was the element, and when you do an insert element, you would see that it is an li, right? It is a list item. Now, li has an ID which has some value. It has a class, right? Now, I could also have used li and clicked on it. See, because let's see what happens. So, for example, let's go ahead and let's get the li element, right? So I would say web element li for registration, right? That's how I want to name this. And I would say driver dot. Now here what I want to use the ID of this, which is menu item 374. So I'll copy that and find element by ID. I will use ID. Then pass this value. Okay, and then I will click this. Okay, and I'm going to comment this now. Let's see the behavior of this. What happens? Okay, so it has clicked once again, right? Because if you see the structure of it, right? Just to look at the structure, it is a list item, and inside the list item there is an anchor. So if you click on the list item as well, it gets clicked. The anchor gets clicked at the same time. So you will realize over time that there are multiple ways in which you can do what you want to do. Sometimes you have to make a choice. Now we don't have to worry about it at this time. This is a very simple example. We could have just used an anchor and we could have just moved on. There will be much complex websites, and at that time you will have multiple options, and sometimes you can take all of the options, either of the options, or the best option what is possible for you. So we have used link text, we have used ID. Let's see if we can use class, right? The li has also a class which has a couple of values. Okay. Now let me go ahead and see if I can use the class values, right? Class values, there are multiple here. Menu item type, post type, menu item object page, and menu item 374. Okay, so now let me go ahead and since this is a list item, I would go ahead and inspect another list item on the page. For example, this right. If you look at that, it has also class values which says menu item type post type, menu item object page type, menu item 140. Okay, so what is differentiating this list item with this list item? Only this last class value, menu item 374. Rest of the classes are same, right? So you will notice that if we try to use menu item, right, it's not uniquely identifying. It is not a unique locator for this element. We will need to use something unique. Now in our case, we already had ID. We can just move on with the ID. We don't need anything else. but this is just to talk about look at the attributes of the elements, and we will be using multiple attributes. So I just wanted to talk about this at this point. Okay, so now, okay, so we found the link item and we clicked it. I will comment this part and we will take the normal way of clicking it. Okay. Now here, as soon as we got the element, right? Let's introspect on this a little bit more. What is this element, right? How does Selenium define this? So let's look at a number of methods which this web element will have. So let's type registration link, and if I do the dot, you will see a couple of methods on it. Okay. Now the first thing what I want to do is I will print this as it is and see what does it print. Okay. I'm going to comment this for now. So okay, I'm just going to print this and see what is this web element. So to run this. Okay, so I've printed that, and let's look at this. What did it print? It said Chrome driver, Chrome on XP, some hash value, and then it has a link text registration. So this is the reference for this web element. Now we will not have to use reference at any point in time. This is just to show you, what this element looks like, how Selenium identifies it internally. Okay, let's look at other methods. Let's say my requirement is for this. I want to get the text, which is registration. I first got the element, right? The web element registration link. But now at this point, I want to see what does its link text is. Okay, so for that, you see when you type registration link dot, if you type G, you will see number of methods on it. The first thing is get text. What does get text return? Get text for web element always returns the value of here, right? In between the opening tag and the closing tag, whatever is there, it returns that. So let's go ahead and print this. Let's say registration text. Okay, and since this is a string, say a string, I'll print this. What is my expectation here? This registration text should be registration. That is my expectation. Okay. Go ahead and run this. Okay, so you can see that the value is registration. Let me take this thread.sleep, comment this, and so that's how you print a text. Let's say I want to print the tag name, right? So registration tag name. What would I say? Registration link dot get tag name. What is my expectation here? The tag name is A, right? Anchor. That's what it should print. So if I print this up, happens. Okay, so it is 8. Okay, I need to give a colon so that we can find a separator here. Okay, so the tag name is 8. Now, another one. Let's say I want to go back and inspect. Let's say I want to get the href attribute value, okay, for this element. So what I would do, I would say string href value is registration link dot. There is a method called get attribute. Okay, but which attribute do you need? You need href attribute. So you need to pass that href. Okay, so let's go back and look at what is href value? HTTP demo QA/registration. So I'm expecting that it should print HTTP demoqa.com registration. Okay, let's go ahead and run this again. There you go. Prints the href attribute value. Okay. Let's say I have a need where I want to print the complete, HTML tag itself. So I can say string HTML tag is registration link dot. There is a get attribute, right? There is a get attribute, and if you say outer HTML, okay, it takes the entire HTML representation of the element and it prints it. So let's print that and see. So what am I expecting here? I'm expecting that it should print this whole thing, starting with the opening tag less than a href is equal to registration all the way till closing tag. Okay, let's print that and see. Okay, you can see that it printed this entire tag. Okay, so let's just walk through, what we have done here. Once again, what we have done, we have first identified and got the web element using a locator, and the locator being link text. Once we got the web element, we are trying to see, what all this web element can do for us. This web element can return the text for us. This web element can return the tag name. It can return the attribute values whenever we ask for a certain attribute. And it can return the entire tag itself for us. Where will this be useful? When you actually start automating your test cases, there might be a validation scenario where you say, I want to check whether the developer has written correct code for, let's say, the href, that it is not a broken link, right? You want to see that it is not a broken link. How will you check that? You will get the value, right? And you will check whether what I expect it to be a valid HTML URL. So Let's take another example. Since anchor had very little information, right? It just had href. Let's take this list item. It has much more, right? It has an ID, it has a class, and so on and so forth. So let's go ahead and first get the element, right? Identify the element and get it. So I'm going to say right. This is the code. So the LI registration, right? I got it first. Now let me go ahead and print some of these values, what I have done for LI, and see what happens, right? So I'm just going to take this code, paste it here, and I don't need to print the object. So first thing, I would get the text, right? Okay, comment this out so that we don't get confused with this. Okay. So what we are doing here, we got the LI element. We are retrieving the text. And how did we first get the element? We used its ID, the locator ID, and then we got the element. Once we got the element, we are getting the text for that element. Let's take a look at the text, right? Where is this? The LI element. Let's see what it prints, the text. Then the tag name. The tag name should be LI in this case. Href. Does it have an href? Sorry. Okay. Well, it doesn't have an href, correct? So probably I don't need href. Let me see. I will get a class. I'll get class for this. Okay. So get attribute. I will say class. And then the outer HTML, which is the entire HTML. So let me go ahead and run this and see what's the output. Okay, so let's see. What is the text? The text is again registration, right? So it ignores any tag information, right? It prints only the values under it. Okay, that's what get text will do for us. Then tag name li, right? That's what we expect it to see. The class value for registration link. See, we see all the class values printed. And then the entire HTML. It prints even the anchor, which is a child element of it. Prints the entire HTML. Now here, since li has a child element, there is another attribute called inner HTML. So let's print and see inner HTML, right? You can say li registration dot now why I'm focusing on this is because you will be using this a lot, and this will help you immensely when we get into advanced topics. Okay, so I would say inner HTML, right, is inner HTML. Let's run this. Okay. Oh, I typed it wrong here, so I need to type inner HTML. And that's why it printed null, because I gave the wrong attribute. Go ahead and run it again. I see there are some questions. Give me another minute or two. I will answer them. Okay, so if you see, the inner HTML prints only the child element. So this is one way where you can get access to child elements by getting the inner HTML for an element. Okay. All right. So let's move on. I want to cover one more topic and then take any more questions. So just to summarize what we have done here, we got the element using the link text. And we have seen what all we can do with the element. You know, we can get a text, tag name, inner HTML, href, attributes, and so on and so on. Let's go back to what we plan to do. Right? I want to open the website. I want to click the registration link. Okay, and there is a form opened up for me. Right? The form has lots of elements. You know, first name, last name. It has radio buttons, it has checkboxes, it has a drop down, so on and so forth. Let's bear in mind that all of these are pretty much web elements. Okay, all of these are web elements. The first step always is to identify a web element. Once we identify a web element, we do a bunch of operations on it. You know, in this case, let's say I want to fill the first name and last name values after I click registration. So first thing what I have to do, I would right click on this and say inspect element. Okay. Now when I inspect that element, you see it says it is input value ID equal to name. So it has an ID. Good enough for me. If I have an ID, I can locate an element using find element by ID. So here I'm going to go ahead and comment this out for now. And my operations are going to be I'll identify the registration and I will click the registration. Okay. Once I click, I want to type in some text. So let's go ahead and first get the element, right? Web element, I would call it first name equal to driver dot. Now I have an ID for it, right? Go ahead and see. I have an ID for it. I also have a name for it. I could have totally used ID, but since we haven't used name so far, I'm just going ahead and using name. Okay. I'll take the first underscore name as the name value. So I will say driver dot find element by name. And then it has the value first underscore name. Once I get the element, now what are the operations possible? Right? It is an input. That means we can input something to it. We can add the text. It's a text box. So if you do first name, the way we can set or send or input some text in a field is send keys. That is the API we have in a so let me type first name dot send keys. Okay, send keys takes a sequence of characters. In my case, I'll just say first name. I'll just type first name. Okay. And similarly, I would find my second element, which is last name. So what I'll do first, inspect the element, identify it first. What does it have? It has an ID, it has a name, last name. So I'll go ahead and use last name. Again, I'm using name. Okay. And I would say I want to input the text. I'll just say last name. Okay. And obviously there are more elements here, radio buttons, checkboxes, and so on and so forth. We don't have time to cover all of those. But what we'll do is we'll give you some practice exercises, and in the next class we will cover some of the more complex elements, like the drop down is a complex one. How do we do that? You see, you can choose a file. There are other things. For now, what I want to do on this form is I'll just fill in, first name. I would then fill in last name, and I would want to click submit. This is what I want to do, and I want that is it. That is it. There might be errors, which is totally fine. For this class, we are focused about how to identify elements using locators. That's all we want to do in this class. So, submit button, right? Let's identify the submit button. We inspect that element. What does it say? It's input, name is submit. So I'll take the name. Okay, say web element submit. And then I will click on the submit button. This is all what I want to do in this one. And I'll put a sleep so that we can see the behavior. So what we have done here, we have first identified the registration link on the first page. As soon as we hit demo here, we click the link. Then the next thing what we do, we identify the first name using its name, locator information being first underscore name. Then we type in the value first name, we identify the last name, type in last name, and click submit at the bottom of the page. That's all we do in this script. Let me go ahead and execute this. So it clicked the registration, it typed the first name, last name, it clicked the submit. Obviously there were errors as we expected, which is fine, but we got what we are expecting it to do. Okay. So I would like to stop at this point on this class. We will again go into more of HTML elements, locator information in the next class. I will also give you practice exercises where you will be able to identify elements using locators and do a bunch of operations. Some hints also will be given as part of your practice exercise. Okay. With that said, let me take the questions. I'm scrolling through the questions right now. So I see a question. It says how to check broken link. Okay, that's an interesting question. Now let's talk about what is a broken link. Okay, what is a broken link? Essentially, if when you click on it, it doesn't take you to a new page, that means it is a broken link, right? How do you identify broken links on a web page? There are tools which do that. It is part of security testing actually. You want to check broken links, you will generally check if the href attribute value is null or not. Okay, that's one way to identify if you are looking for broken links on a web page. Now, looking for broken links on a web page is generally not part of your functional automation testing. it is part of security testing, and in many companies, large companies, financial companies, where they extensively do security testing, they have separate tools. Rational App Scan is one such tool, and it is licensed and it's pretty expensive. So security testing is a whole big domain where broken links, SQL injections, you want to check cross-site attacks, all those things will be checked as part of that. However, if you still want to say, I want to check broken links, the simplest way is to check if href, okay, get the href attribute. Let me show you what we have done here, right? We got the href attribute value. If this value is empty or null, generally it is a broken link. That is a very simple way to check broken link. Okay. Let's see. Okay. Opening up for questions. You have any questions, guys? Again, once again to repeat, all this code will be shared. Some practice exercises will be given to you. Presentation will be shared as well. We will. The next class would be for us the following Saturday, same time. I will stay here for questions. Lakshay, are you there?
Yeah, Pradeep. There is a question from Zarana. If you can answer
Okay.
her.
So let's see. What is the difference between find element by link text and find element by partial link text? Okay. So we haven't looked at partial link text. Simple answer would be if you know partial text of the link, okay, you can use the partial link text. So let's say, go back to our okay. Now on this link, right, you have link text which is registration. Let's say some links have too many words, right? Registration link, XYZ, and so on and so forth. You could pass the entire link text to identify an element, or you could also pass partial text to it. Partially you can give some text, and that way the locator will be able to identify. The partial link text is generally helpful for you to locate an element when you don't have complete information about that link. We will cover that in the next class. We also haven't covered how to identify elements by using XPath, CSS. So these are all element locating strategies, and we will be touching upon these element locating strategies all through the course. When we encounter situations, which one to use in what situation, that is, where should we use ID, where should we use name, where should we use XPath or CSS, we will touch upon this again. Okay, let's see, what's the next question? Can you discuss about locating class when it is too long? Right. So as we have seen here, the class, right? The class has multiple values for the list element. Let's take a look at this, right? It has too many values, right? Generally, whenever you are identifying a locator, identifying an element using a locator, you would want minimum number of values. So in this case, class is not a good candidate to identify this element. That is why we haven't used class. We went ahead and just used ID. Okay, so you will always, sometimes you'll find situations where elements will have multiple attributes, and you would have to make a choice which attribute is the most simplest and uniquely identifiable. If you have, lengthy, too many classes like this, it's not a good candidate to identify this element by find class. Okay. There are situations. I'll give you an example. I was working with a. So I work for a financial organization, and we do have clients, big clients. Was working with a big firm where they had a need where they had elements which just had classes and nothing else. They did not have ID, they did not have name, they just had classes. So we could always use strategies like XPath and CSS to identify elements. But what happens over time when elements do not have enough locator information is your code becomes extremely cluttered and you will get lost in your own code when you have to fix it later. So the best practice is always to go back to the UI developer and ask and tell, hey, you know what, this element has just class and it has 2 long names and it doesn't have an ID, it doesn't have a name. Can you please assign an ID or a name? So that's one of the strategies you would always find in real-time situations where you will go and have a conversation with the UI developer and ask him to add attributes like ID and name. That would be the easiest way to handle such kind of situations. Okay. Let's see if we have any more questions. Just scrolling up in the list. Okay, great. I guess we are on the dot, 10:30 p.m. Indian Standard Time. Let's call it class, and we will reconvene next weekend. Thanks everyone, guys.